I'm live. It's been a long time since I've been live, and I hate my house. I hate my house. I hate my life. Um, but and for those of you who are reading the title of this, I don't mean you specifically, or you, or you, or you. I mean beginners. It's like the algebra for dummies. It's not that you're dumb. It's like, and it's not that you're lazy. I know those awful books, you know. One of my favorite ones that I saw was Beanie Babies for Dummies. And I said, well, that's perfectly named. Um, because Beanie Babies were at one point they were created to be collectible. And I think that's always a bad sign for anything that actually is going to go up in value. Um, you know, buying a collectible spoon or a collectible plate or a collectible Beanie Baby or a collectible pen, even. There were a lot of companies, and they still do, they put out, and they're good companies that put out limited editions or whatever it is. And there's nothing wrong with putting out a limited edition, but to put out something that is meant to be collectible, I think that's not a good idea. Anyway, pen shows for dummies. What I mean by that is, if you haven't ever been to a pen show, you are in for a treat, and you are also in for being overwhelmed. You're going to walk in, and you'll be it's the kid in the candy store. You don't know which way to go first, which where to go first. So one of the things that I think you need to do is make a little shopping list in your brain, if not on a piece of paper, of things you're looking for. If you're looking for this particular pen, this one exactly, you'd say Schaefer Craftsman in brown stripe with a Triumph nib, lifetime, lever fill. Okay, that'll bring you to this pen if you can find one. If you want a pen to draw with, that's a different story. If you're looking for a pen to do calligraphy with, then you don't have a particular pen in mind, but you know what you want. So for example, let's say you love journaling, or you love calligraphy, or you love drawing. Well, bring with you your favorite paper you use, because if you use very smooth paper, a pen will write presumably well on a smooth piece of paper. But if you like really textured paper, some pens won't like it. So bring the paper you like to the show. You could bring the ink you like, but I wouldn't recommend it because, well, if you bring ink that you like, make sure it's a good ink that won't clog people's pens. Don't bring your shimmery ink. Don't bring your waterproof ink. Don't bring your ink that might cause problems in my pen. Don't come to my table with your ink. But if you have to bring ink with you, bring ink that's made by Parker or Waterman or Schaefer, ink that's or Mont Blanc even. Bring ink that's for use for fountain pens rather than for dip calligraphy pens. So you bring your paper that you like to draw on or write on or journal in. Bring Maybe bring a, a favorite pen of yours, the pen that you like the best, your best pen. And you say, I really love this pen. I want one like it. Now, chances are it's the nib you're talking about rather than the color of the pen. If you really like red pens, that's an easy one for you to find. You just look around until you find a red pen to buy. But if you want a particular kind of nib, let's say you love really, really fine nibs, you can say, I'm looking for a nib that's writes as fine as this one does. And then I would say, oh, sure, I've got something just like that. It's right here. Try it out. Or someone else might say, oh, I don't have anything that's that fine. That's a specialty nib. Or someone might say, I don't know what I got. Look, you do the work. Many pen collectors and pen dealers may not know the nibs they have because some of the pen dealers are like stamp collectors. They don't know what they taste like on the back because they don't actually send a letter through the mail using those stamps. They just put them in a book and look at them. And so some pen people are like that too. They just look at the pen and admire it, and there's nothing wrong with that. But for them, one nib is just like another. They don't particularly care about the way it writes because they don't write with it. So if you have a pen that you really like, bring your best pen, bring your best paper or the paper you like to write with or the paper you use most of the time. And what else can you do? Bring cash. Cash is always good. Bring, not everyone has credit card machinery, so bring cash. Some people still use checks, and you can bring those, and some people take them still. But cash is king. If you know anyone there, whether it's a dealer or a fellow customer, you see someone there that you can say, hey, Kesh, you can say, what dealer do you like? Who should I buy from? Whose table should I see first? Chances are people have favorites. Sometimes people might think that so-and-so's table is really expensive, and that might be true, but there's usually always a good reason why this pen might cost twice as much at that table than at that table. And it might be that that table really likes these pens or paid a lot for them or repaired them and guarantees them, where that table that has this pen, you buy it as is. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. He hasn't done anything to it. So you might want to ask around, certainly ask if the pen works, because not all pens do work. Cash is king, but Kesh is pretty close. I'm speaking with Keshev is in my live stream right now, and he's a very talented musician, singer from India. And I've known him for a decade or so, maybe not quite so long. And he'll remember, he'll tell me. We met on my 60th birthday, was that right? I was broadcasting live on StreamYard, Anyway, before I forget what I was talking about, there are some dealers who will just sell the pens the way they are. Because a lot of pen collectors like fixing their own pens, and they'd rather have the pleasure of doing that themselves. So they look for the ones that haven't been repaired. But anyway, you can always ask anyone, does this pen work? And the dealer should be able to tell you. Sometimes they might be wrong or mistaken. I bought a pen in San Francisco, or Philadelphia rather, from a collector that I bought a bunch of pens from. I bought about 5 pens from him that day, and he said they all worked, and I was excited about putting ink in one of them, and 4 of them worked, and the 5th one didn't have a sack in it, so I had to do that myself. But most people will tell you if they work or not. 8 years, Periscope. Yeah, but that was a live stream. Periscope was. What else can I tell you about navigating a pen show? It's good to walk around the room once before getting out your cash, unless you know specifically what you want. It's just good to just see who's there, who has the pens that you think you want. There are, at the Boston Pen Show, which is coming up in 2 weeks, most of the dealers are vintage pen people. There might be a few that sell modern pens. Boston is good known for their vintage people. Another thing that Boston is known for is most of the dealers are also pen users. They love writing with them. So you should be able to find people at the Boston show who can really help you out, help you find the right pen for you. Let's see, what other things do you need to know about a pen show? There are specific differences between a modern pen and a vintage pen. If you only use modern pens and you want to try a vintage pen, you will notice a number of differences right away, almost right away. Vintage pens tend to be lighter. Vintage pens tend to be a little smaller, many of them. A standard pen back in the olden days, was this size or this size. They were not overly big. They were not overly heavy. So you'll pick up a pen and you'll say, gee, why is this so light? And that'll surprise you. Another thing you'll find out about older pens is the nib types are all over the map. A modern pen will have a extra fine or a fine and a medium and a broad. Maybe you can find one that has a stub nib that comes from the factory. Certainly you can maybe order some that can be different, or you can have them altered at a pen show by a nib smith. But a vintage pen, they have hundreds of different nib styles, mainly because of the flexibility factor. Modern pens tend not to be flexible, but the vintage pens can be. And with flexibility comes a whole range of, it's like going from seeing something in black and white and seeing something in color. There's so many different ways to appreciate the flexibility of a pen. Some pens are really flexible, some are very stiff, some are fine flex, some are medium flex. Um, there's just it's night and day, black and white in color, and but even without that aspect, there were pens back in the olden days. Pens were the only game in town. You didn't have typewriters, you didn't have word processors, you didn't need to make carbon copies, and everyone wrote. Everyone used pens, and there were nibs made for lefties, there were nibs made for accountants, there were nibs made for artists, there were nibs, so many different kinds of nibs were made for different professions. And that's what's really kind of fun about trying out vintage pens, because if there were suddenly 20 random vintage pens on my desk, each one, chances are, each one would write differently. You know, there might be some similar ones, but they all will probably write differently. With a modern pen, if I went to a pen shop, modern pen store, and I said, pick 20 random pens, and I had, there were 4 Mont Blancs and 4 Parkers and a couple of Schaeffers and a Pilot and whatever, chances are they would fit into the extra fine, fine, medium, broad stub, and you'd have 5 different nibs. And in 20 pens, there'd be 4 that would write almost identically. Now, yes, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but that's sort of the idea. And many modern pen companies have nibs that are made by one company. One company supplies 20 companies their nibs. And so of course they're going to write alike. So I just think that you're going to find, if you come to a pen show and you've never tried a vintage pen, you're going to be in for a real treat. Now, you might be entirely overwhelmed by the variety, and maybe you will be turned off by that. But you'll have an experience. What else can I tell you? I can tell you I'm getting hungry. My dinner last night was Cheez-Its and red wine. So, yes, I'm a bachelor. Yes, I'm lazy. Yes, I don't like to cook. So on that note, I'm going to say goodbye. Goodbye, everyone.